It's hard to coordinate schedules, and life can throw some impressive curveballs. Sometimes players can't make sessions, and there's nothing wrong with that. But when no time has passed in-game, it can be hard to explain why a character is absent from the session. Sure, you can puppet them, but whether it's the DM or another player, it never feels quite right, and if death or blot happens, no one feels good about it. Sometimes there's a perfectly reasonable explanation. King Kingston has requested Andala the Arcanist as his personal bodyguard for the evening, and though she would prefer to join your snooping, she cannot refuse. Particularly in serious campaigns, I'll look for those opportunities. Sometimes, though, there's no easy answer. A DM I used to play with had a god of chaos who was fixated on the party and would randomly turn our characters into small resin figures for indeterminate amounts of time. But you have to plan ahead to have that. When I first started DMing, I didn't, so things got interesting. Thankfully, there was enough silliness in that campaign that I could get away with whatever reason I happened to invent. One time, there was this creepy old man on the road who demanded the party best him in a staring contest. The rogue was possessed by a demon, because of course he was, and his buddy refused to let him back down, so the party completed the dungeon while they were waiting. When he got back, he wouldn't say if he had won, but he did have the old man's glass eye. One of the boss fights my players remembered best was this evil scarecrow they had found in a ruined Underdark settlement. I'm not sure if it was because he had a serious regenerative property, or because of his distinctive laugh, but it certainly made me question all the forgotten ones I had spent hours on the personalities and history of. Anyways, because he had kept reforming himself, the party stuffed his ashes into a bottle and kept him with them until they could find a solution. He was still awake, though, and would periodically try to escape. So one time, when the guy who had nearly died in the boss fight couldn't make it for a few weeks, I had the bottle hop out of his pack and roll back into the Underdark, his panicked character chasing it the whole way. The party figured he'd be fine and kept moving. Serious props to the player, though. He made the most of it. When he came back, his character had this 1,000-yard stare, and he had seen some shit. Any mention of going underground would bring his trauma rushing back, and he would suggest an alternate plan before dropping some random detail from his misadventures. It was delightful. That was definitely my player's favorite example. It's a running gag to this day, but my personal favorite happened a bit more organically. For the bottle, I knew the player would be gone for a while, but for the first absence of our next campaign, we thought it was just going to be one session, so I had the character get stuck in quicksand and tell the others he'd catch up with them. It was months before he came back. Now, my plan had always been for him to catch up, panting, saying that he was only like 15 minutes behind the whole time, and they had just never looked back. But by the time he returned to the party, they had crossed multiple bodies of water, gone through several walled cities that just wouldn't have let his character come through. So I just sort of... The sand gave him back, and we never spoke of it again. Thanks for listening.